And we are recording on Monday, December 16th, 2024 at 12:13 p.m. Eastern Time with Dr. George Nasr and quintuple PhD Lee Slusher, Olympic athlete, GQ model,
Thank you.
Forbes 30 under 30, meaning he's worth $30 billion. Lee is currently dating Melania Trump, and that's how I introduce Lee. A lot of people say that's bullshit. He's not. He's just an army intel guy with a consulting group, and I go, you don't fucking know the half of it. But yeah, I'm gonna text you all this link right now. Um, but yeah, so I don't know, other than the drones taking over US airspace, as if, as if that wasn't sexy enough, or as if Russia launching that hypersonic missile in Ukraine the other week wasn't sexy enough. Now we have really kind of like one of a couple options. There's either foreign aircraft in our airspace and we are impotent to do anything about it, or it's the running conspiracy that it's DHS looking for a lost nuke, and then best case scenario it's an alien civilization making contact. So Merry Christmas everybody, and Lee, what do you think is going on?
I actually thought we were here to talk about the Middle East.
Or that,
Um,
or the Middle East. I mean,
yeah,
take it any which way you want, dude. I don't care.
yeah. George and I had a conversation
Okay, then
yesterday,
we'll no
and
fuck all of that. We're going to the Middle East now. Forget everything,
okay.
guys. Literally
Well,
forget all of that.
we got drones here, so it's the same thing.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, no, then go into it. Yeah, Middle East.
If I can start with some remarks,
Yeah,
I'd like to go ahead and do that. Some in the audience may find these absurd or even offensive, but others will find them obvious, I think. So here goes.
sure.
Uh, I want to start with October 7th because that leads us up to what's going on now. Um, I've never believed for a second that Israel was caught off guard on October 7th or that it received and misinterpreted the indicators and warnings of the attack. So we have to, I'm going to walk through it for a minute. So Gaza is tiny. And between Israeli military intelligence and Shin Bet, which is the domestic intelligence agency, they keep this place under a microscope. So consider the things we're supposed to believe simultaneously. On the one hand, Israel was unaware or unprepared for Hamas's attack. But on the other hand, it was able to, for example, surreptitiously insert explosives into thousands of Hezbollah pagers, find and kill the longtime Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, then within weeks do the same thing to his replacement and most of the other senior leadership. Assassinate a senior Hamas figure, not only in Iran, but inside an IRGC compound in Iran. So I realized some of those things were likely the work of Mossad and not of Shin Bet or military intelligence. But are we really to believe that one portion of Israel's security apparatus has this seemingly otherworldly degree of competence, while the others were unable to see what was happening quite literally right before their eyes? Now, for reference, at least for American listeners, Gaza is slightly smaller in area than Philadelphia, but it's long, narrow, and backed up against the Mediterranean. I raise this point to note that that makes surveillance as a technical matter much easier because the place has such little depth. And we also have to consider, the AI-based targeting system that Israel employed in Gaza,
Lavender.
several of them, uh, and here I'm referring specifically to Gospel and Lavender. So we're to believe also that Israel had these things on hand and ready to go in the event of hostilities, but they also missed what was going on in Gaza. Like none of this really adds up. So in other words, what I'm expressing here is this goes far beyond mere suspicion. It's more of a don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining kind of thing. So why does this all matter? Well, the attack enabled everything that followed, from the destruction of Gaza to what I think is likely the wholesale reshaping of the Middle East of the sort we haven't seen in living memory. And we're in the early days of that. So, uh, pretty interesting times. I'll
Yeah, and
turn it over.
I think that's a very fair point, and I have accomplished my goal. If I always say I try to have everyone a little bit upset at me, because that means I know I'm walking like a middle path of like mental limberness, and I do love. And one day I got comments of of not only am I a Zionist, and someone else on a different video, same day, just purebred Nazi. And I'm like, I'm fucking threading the needle, baby. But like, I think those are all fair points because you just it's not a question about the country or the people. It can be, I don't care. But just as like a mental exercise, you can't have both. You can't
Hmm.
be simultaneously, it's like in
Omnipotent.
Trump's first term, he can't simultaneously be the stupid orange stooge and like a 4 decade long KGB asset here to destroy the U. It's one or the other, right? You're the best or the worst, and you can't be both. So it's either they're running Epstein Island and Ghislaine Maxwell and orchestrating all of our senators with videos, and that's why they're able to pull the U.S. into endless wars. But at the same time, they're just like, I don't know, the Andy Griffith show, just Keystone Cops and didn't see, on the literal, I would say, other than the DMZ, the most surveilled border on the planet. They just came across in what seems like a shitty, like early 2000s, like, I don't know, Chris Farley-esque. They came over on paragliders. Like it it's one or the other. It's one or
Hmm.
the other. So, George,
I actually, first thing is you trying to be in the middle makes you an honorary Lebanese. So you're both a Nazi and what is it, the Zionist?
yes, I'm a
You
not
got, yeah,
Zionist. Not Zionist. Yeah,
yeah,
not Zionist.
yeah. So basically, yeah, we'll make you an honorary Lebanese. We get the same treatment here. It's like you cannot ask those questions. Everybody, the reason I am convinced, really, by your argument, I told you this one during our, I was watching the news, a couple of days, the Israeli news,
Hey
like they were
George,
talking
can you
about
come a
this.
little closer to your microphone? You're a bit
Yes,
distant.
here, voila. I think you can hear me better now. Anyway, so I was watching the news and they got the Israeli, I think it was the previous head of the Shin Bet, and he basically said something. It sounded to me like a typical Arabic potentate would say that to question what was happening, to question the authorities, or to question the what is it, the story was basically to be anti-patriotic. This is typically what you would expect somebody to hear when he's covering for something. Not to get conspirational, but the one thing you notice is that there's a lot of newly discovered resources. Well, they're not newly discovered, but they're newly exploitable resources in Gaza, and they're also in the southern Lebanon zones, the exclusive economic zones of gas and oil. There is also Qatar and Iran now are losing market share in China. The main export market is China. They're losing market share to Australia. They're also losing market share in India to Australia, which leaves the only market for them for gas and oil, especially gas, to be Europe. And Europe now, without the Nord Stream pipeline, is going to be desperate for gas from other sources. They already are plugged in the North African market. They already get, sorry, the North African suppliers in. So they get from Libya, but those come from Spain and France. And they're treated differently. So from the gas that went directly to Germany, because the French add this odor thing to gas, you cannot reuse it in the German factories. So the systems are different. What I mean is, you have this valuable resources, this resource all of a sudden, and now you have a chain of events that happen. Hezbollah is out, the Syrian regime is out, the Iranian regime is, I don't know what they're doing, they seem to be in trouble. And you have all these changes, and like we said, we are believe that this is completely coincidental. As an aside, my personal experience during the war, when you cross an Israeli checkpoint, when I was a paramedic, those guys are all over the place. Oh, we got a power interruption, but the system still goes on. So those guys are supposed to be um, know it all. When we cross the checkpoint, they know everything about you. They see everything. They see everything you're doing. And now Gaza, which is a flat land, they're able to pull this off. It doesn't make sense.
Lee.
We had one of those
Yeah,
Lebanese events. We got the power interruption, but we got it back on.
you're good.
Yeah, that's how Lebanon works.
You're
We
good.
shift from one system to the other.
You're good. Lee.
Yeah, I think George reached out because he has a background in energy, and mine is more in, I guess, these days in strategy. So what's the confluence of those? And George has some interesting maps in his book that's about to be released that show kind of the disposition of water and oil and other things like that. So I think going forward, I mean, look, I think a great many people understand that most wars are resource wars. There's been a lot of open, I don't even know if we can call it speculation. It's probably better established about, natural gas fields off the coast of Gaza, about a bunch of other resources about who's going to supply Europe. Is it going through Syria? Is it going up through Turkey? Um, I think that's definite. That's why I was happy to talk to George today because he has that background in energy and can shed some more light on it. George, you mentioned something earlier to me about Turkey. If you want to explain that, because a lot of people are comparing these the competing axes here and the competing paths by which they might supply Europe.
Yes, this is the pipeline that is supposed to go through Turkey. You see those pictures on the internet. It means pumping the gas or the oil uphill and then downhill. When you go uphill across mountainous, snowy region, it's not going to work. The best path are the ones that go from, would go from Qatar, Iran, and then to southern Syria, across Jordan first, then in the Golan, and then to either Lebanon, Zahrani, or Haifa in Israel. These are the simplest paths. Now, in the past, when the region, when they drew the border of the region, they went through the French and the British in 1916. They drew the border of the region because they had discovered oil here. So they drew the borders based on where the oil was and the pipelines they needed to cross the oil to. Once they did this, that's the first step they did. Now that we have those other gas resources coming in, the best way to cross them would be to follow the same path. So they will have to come through Jordan. I don't think they will come through Syria anymore because now Israel is in those locations where you would have the old path. There was a pipeline called the TAP line, and there's another one called the IPC. Now Israel occupies them, right? And it would go through either Lebanon or Israel. That's going to be the other problem is Lee is more familiar with this. Turkey used to be the biggest hegemon in Europe. We forget that Turkey claimed to be the successor of the Roman Empire because Turkey, the Ottomans, Ottoman, the descendants of Ottoman, they conquered Constantinople. By right of conquest, he becomes Caesar. This was the second Rome. And the Europeans refused that. So this thing is still there. I'm not saying he's claiming to be Caesar, but it's there. The Europeans will never accept to be at the mercy of Turkey. But they may want to have some leverage. The other thing, Lee, you mentioned to me is that it's useful in a way, this is useful for the Americans because it does keep Europe on a tight leash.
Um,
Yeah, oh, go ahead.
yeah, George. While Lee's talking, can you, if you can come closer to your phone or laptop or
Yeah,
phone,
I'll do that. I'll adjust
it's
it.
really I can edit it after. I can make it louder, but for people listening now, it's kind of
No need to make
distant.
you work too much. I'll fix it.
No, you're good. Sorry, Lee, go on.
Yeah, if we look at what happened to Nord Stream, and I suppose there are some people who still think we didn't do it, but I'm not sure what to tell them. Uh, I think the Europeans probably need to realize or take heart in the old saying, with friends like these, who needs enemies? Because we basically neutered them in at least in that respect. And so now where else, from where else does it come? And this George can speak to this better than I can, but liquefied natural gas is not going to really solve the problem. It's not at scale. The cost isn't correct. So here, what we're seeing is essentially Europe has been put in a very bad spot. We see the German economy suffering as a result, and all the other economies. And so now there's this fight in the Middle East about who gets to supply this. Now, I don't I don't focus specifically on energy very much, but I wanted to add a couple of more points about the things I do look at. So one thing I find interesting about this fall of Assad recently, my view for a long time was that The IDF was not going to be able to proceed north into southern Lebanon and rout or push back Hezbollah. Terrain is the great equalizer. It's large formations can't operate there effectively. Plus, it would be a repeat of 2006, but probably worse, right? All the roads have bombs buried under them. There's tunnels, and every avenue of approach available to the Israelis would lead into a kill zone, that kind of thing. So they were in a pickle. But magically, in a span of what was it, 11 days, uh, the regime of Bashar al-Assad, Assad, excuse me, just collapsed almost without fighting. So rather remarkable because that solved Israel's problem of not being able militarily to crush Hezbollah. Now their supplies are essentially cut off. This regime that everything kind of went from Iran into Syria into Lebanon, and now they're all left without that. And so we need to really focus. When I say I think this is reshaping the Middle East in a way that we haven't seen in living memory, like this is one piece of it. They removed the linchpin that allowed that whole apparatus to operate in the Levant. And what have they done since, the Israelis, that is? Well, they've practically destroyed anything of military value that belonged to the Syrian Arab Army. I mean, if you look at the videos that came out last night, these explosions are freaking
Oh yeah,
enormous.
Taurus.
Yeah, they sunk what was left of the Syrian Navy. They're bombing everything of value. And then they've moved up. If you just, basic terrain analysis, they're moving up into positions that will allow them to cut off anyone kind of trying to go into Lebanon and resupply Hezbollah. So that leads to a couple of things. Obviously, increased Israeli freedom of movement. Also, there's the reality of we don't quite know what Turkey is going to do in portions of Syria, but Erdogan came out and stated quite clearly that many of these places should become provinces of Turkey. So this is a dramatic reshaping, and where does that lead? What does that mean for Iran? And something George and I were speculating about yesterday is it possible that Iran maybe sold out these old allies? I mean, I don't know. I just think it's an interesting question to ponder because we don't really know all that well what's going on inside Iran, the extent to which there are domestic power struggles. We know that the Trump administration is coming back. We know, based on the person appointed to deal with this, that the maximum pressure campaign of Trump's first administration is coming back. Israel is openly mulling bombing Iran's nuclear facilities. Trump even said, I think it was back in October, that they should do this. So again, it's hard to tell with Trump. Is he coming in hard as part of the deal to try to get concessions so that we avoid a conflict, or is he just openly endorsing one? I mean, I don't pretend to know the difference, but this is part of that broader reshaping because Iran's reach, all the way out to the Levant is now significantly lessened. Hezbollah, right now, the Israeli Air Force continues to bomb what's left of Syria, but I fully expect that in a pretty short period of time, they're going to return to bombing Hezbollah in Lebanon. So where all this goes, go ahead, George.
They're still doing some targeting here. It's not quite over. So the news around Syria, but there's still some breaches of the ceasefire around here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in Beirut anymore, but there's still some breaches.
Do you think there's
My
sorry, go on, George.
No, what I mean is, I think Turkey would be overreaching if it thinks it can go back to the Ottoman days. Syria was always a very decentralized country. It was the French centralized it, then left. Then you recall I showed you the series of coup d'etat in 1949. Like every 6 months, every 3 years, they had a coup d'etat. Then the current Bashar al-Assad's father took over in 1970. And what he did, he froze the country. That's, in a way, one of the reasons why the system collapsed so fast. It was too rigid. The sun couldn't reform it because the only way the system could survive is by being extremely rigid. But then now that the sun is left, there is no army in Syria. There are many armies. Turkey is going to face in the Latakia region the same trouble Israel would face in Lebanon. Even though Latakia may be less ready, but it's also a hilly terrain. It has Aleppo is a huge region. It's as big as Lebanon by itself. It also has a lot of hills, a lot of places to hide. it's not, Erdogan may talk a big game, but I don't think he will have the run of a place for a while, but then it will escape him. It's tricky to make predictions, but it will require a lot of force for them to be able to sustain it. And he has another problem, is that there's two autonomous Kurdish regions, one in Iraq and one in Syria. He crushes one, what will happen to the other? And how will the Kurds in his own country react? Their best bet would be to find a way to try to preserve Syria, maybe in a decentralized manner. But the Syrians are actually quite an educated people. They will be able to find a way to manage their own country. But if foreign interference keep at it, to make the Lebanese civil war look like peanuts compared to.
So this isn't just the normal like tit for tat, you know, I don't know, like yeah, the Middle East is at war again. Like what else is new? Lee, can you go into that a little more, saying that this is like legitimate restructuring? I'm retarded. I look at it, I'm like, yeah, of course they're out. It's the same as I'm 34. It just kind of seems like there's always war there. But
Sure.
you're saying that this isn't just your normal, Sunni Shiite like tit for tat. This is an actual restructuring.
Yeah, I really think so. And that's why I tried to mention earlier, Nord Stream and then, this supplemental kind of, who gets to control the supplemental energy source or replacement one. Um, we have seen all kind, for the entirety of our lives, we've seen chaos in the Middle East in various places. We've been responsible for kind of creating much of it ourselves, the US, that is. Um, but this is, I have a kind of a crude hypothesis that I'm working through. I don't normally share things publicly until I have them fully worked out, but I shared some details on Twitter the other day, so I'll go for it. I have a suspicion that I'm going to kind of try to work out an analysis that Turkey, that Erdogan is meant to draw the short straw here. That his both the problems he would face, like such as with various Kurdish groups, but also the ability, this kind of neo-Ottoman glory, that he won't be able to resist himself, and that he's going to get overextended, and that Turkey therefore becomes much weaker and possibly even a force for destabilizing Iran. So if here's the broader strategic view the paradigm that I'm working in. The West wants to confront the China, Russia, Iran axis. But militarily confronting China and East Asia, Russia and Eastern Europe, it's just a non-starter with the current state of our militaries, the defense industrial production, all sorts of other reasons. So who's the weakest link in that triad? Well, it's Iran. But even that, we could bomb the hell out of them. But beyond that, getting a force up there it faces tremendous difficulties. But then there's Turkey, and Turkey shares a border, and Turkey's now like this chaos that unfolded. I definitely think that we, the Turks and the Israelis, were a part of it. This wasn't some spontaneous collapse of Assad. So now, where does he go with this? Well, he's already talking about trying to, annex some of these regions. He's got other enemies, particularly of the Kurdish variety, that he's going to go after. But if you go a little bit farther out into the South Caucasus, if you remember back in 2020, the Nagorno-Karabakh war, that happened because Turkish technology and know-how enabled Azerbaijan to defeat Armenia in a conflict that had been lopsided in Armenia's favor for decades. Then, of course, there was another kind of 1 day long segment of that war that occurred last year, in which Azerbaijan was able to take territory. Now there are what are probably weapon shipments from a variety of countries, Israel, Bulgaria, some others, that are repeatedly going into Baku in Azerbaijan. So why does all this matter? If we think of the Turkic peoples being kind of the basis of this Ottoman or neo-Ottoman adventure, they consider the view, the phrase is, between Turkey and Azerbaijan, two countries, one people. So we're kind of the same. We've even seen senior Turkish military officers wearing Azerbaijani uniforms at meetings in Baku. So this is all right up on the border with Iran. They're ethnic Azeris. a huge portion of Iran's population is ethnic Azeri, right up there. Every time there's fighting around Nagorno-Karabakh, the Iranian military sends its forces up there to try to prevent any spillover or uprising. So my big question that I'm trying to figure out in this reshaping is, okay, Turkey's sort of been let loose. They were able to uh, support these jihadists in an attempt to get rid of Assad, and now they're trying to take pieces of Syria. There's likely going to be another attempt at a land grab up in Armenia, and this is all right on the Iranian border, consisting of people who comprise, I can't remember the exact population percentage, but it's something like a quarter of Iran. And I could see this potentially being the Erdogan potentially being the dupe here. Like if the goal is to go after the weak link in that China, Russia, Iran axis, and now we've kind of set loose this guy who's going to be causing a lot of chaos along that border, what might that do inside Iran? And again, just a hypothesis right now, not even fleshed out, but we'll see. Also, there's the fact that all of these jihadists that are now in Syria, how many of them are going to go back into Iraq, just like what happened a decade ago? We know when ISIS in Syria then came in and took over about a third of Iraq. Uh, there are real concerns about that, and Iran has already come out and said if that happens, they're going to at least provide support to the holy sites in Iraq. So if you wanted to overextend and weaken Iran, the things that we're seeing happening right now would play directly into that.
Is
So
there
I think
any
that would be the next step here.
is there any credence to the greater Israel kind of, I don't know, idea that that's what's going on?
I mean, there are certainly
I would,
many in Israel who want it. Go ahead, George.
Sure.
I would say resource-wise, it's hard for them to pull. I mean, there's 9 million people in Israel. Half of them don't serve in the army. So half the Israelis don't serve in the army, can't serve in the army. Uh, Partly because 25% of them are Haredim and the other 25% are Arabs. You get half the population, that's 4.5 million. You're going to bleed this population dry, to expand your border, and Syria by itself, one province in Syria has more people than Israel. It's not that practical. What may happen, actually, let's realize something. The borders of the Levant, once they have been drawn by the French and the British in the 1916, 1920, they haven't changed practically for the large part since then. And European borders changed much more than the Levant borders. So Syria remains stable more or less. Iraq remains stable border-wise as an entity. Even within Iraq, the Kurds are largely independent, but they still officially are under Iraqi sovereignty. They still fly the Iraqi flag. They don't have their own independence. Even during Lebanon, during the civil war, we remained nominally as one entity under one geographic legal entity. So beyond, okay, Israel annexed the Golan, but that's basically because between Syria and Israel, there was no demarcation on the Golan. The border was not clearly demarcated, and this was already disputed territory in a way. Israelis could claim that because there was no clear demarcation. But they have clear demarcation with all the others. It's not like with the stroke of a pen you're going to. That's why I changed my background. I put all these religious communities. No need to know who's what, but look at all these colors. You're coming. The Israelis are one color in those colors, and the biggest
Mm-hmm.
color is yellow, Sunni. They're going to go for the rest Israel. How will you pull it off? Or where do you stop? Where do you start?
Yeah, I
They
think
would
you're
need what
correct.
they need.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
good.
practically what they need. Sorry, just to finish up, I would approach it from a resource perspective. If they want to create their own Eretz Israel, they would want to control the entire Jordan basin. So ideally, you would have to add the Hasbani, which means they have to add part of South Lebanon. They want to reach the Litani, which means adding another part of South Lebanon. But through the ceasefire agreement now, the Lebanese army is present on the south of Lebanon and is implementing its part of the agreement. So this means finding that the Lebanese army, which is equipped by the Americans, which is now supported, and CENTCOM is now present in Lebanon. So will Israel attack CENTCOM? Israel is a bit Under those conditions, that's hard to pull.
I think that's correct. And in addition to resources, I'd say it's also about strategic depth. So destabilizing the main threats that Israel perceives to itself within the region. Um, that's why I think, but that's another aspect of this reshaping is potentially breaking up previously powerful entities into less powerful, smaller ones that are not necessarily hostile to Israel. So I could see that, the strategic depth and the resources. But yeah, I agree that the establishment of Greater Israel in other regards seems it faces a lot of challenges.
Do you think so? If the sands are shifting with Trump, I mean, there are some obvious changes, right? It's like Trump comes in, so there's going to be changes at the border. There's going to be changes with illegals. There's going to be changes with Ukraine funding. Do you think the same thing happened now? Do you think that they are moving in a way or with a confidence or lack thereof? I have no idea. Now that Trump is coming to office in for 35 days. Do you think there's a difference in that? And like much like one hypothesis is like the drones we're seeing right now, it's like, yeah, there's a window of opportunity of what some world powers perceive to be a weak administration going to be replaced by a strong one, or if you don't like Trump and like Biden, you could say the inverse, whatever.
Mm.
But there's a window, and it's so they're kind of like, let's get as much as we can, smash and grab before the cops come. Could it be the inverse with Israel? Do you think they're looking at it and it's, the left for they do have the kind of, the free Palestine contingent, whereas in the right, for better or worse, there does seem to be a more, they're our ally, they're our greatest ally. I think it's all dog shit. I hate everybody. But like, do you think that there's like a reality to that, to where it's like Trump's coming in, like, yeah, just start going for it. I know the substitute teacher. He's my buddy. Like the new guy's coming in, we can just start fucking smashing and grabbing.
I think at least regarding Ukraine, there have been some attempts to be reckless, potentially to keep it rolling, to expand it, because Trump has expressed a desire to end it.
Hmm.
So in that respect, I think there's some shenanigans going on that are quite dangerous. But in the Middle East, it's really hard to say because, I mean, I'd argue it'd be difficult to find a president who's been more pro-Israel than Trump.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I
Um,
mean. Is do you think Israel is going at like we don't need like just start going for it?
if my view of the shifting sands here, of this reshaping of the region is correct, then it would work toward the benefit of Trump's stated goals uh, when it comes to the Middle East and Iran and Iran's nuclear program and all of that. So, I mean, beyond that, I don't know. It's hard to say. George?
Um, I remember during the US election here, the Lebanese don't agree on a lot, but everybody agreed that they wanted Trump and not Kamala. Like you had, even the Hezbollah people wanted Trump because even the Arabs wanted Trump. Everybody, because this is a guy who's a deal maker. They know, you know what to expect from him. Kamala Harris, nobody took her seriously. I mean, literally, they were like, "What? I'm not talking politics. I don't like politics that much. I try to focus as a technocrat on resources, the technical parts. But no, everybody was like, are they seriously voting for this woman? I mean, it was a hard sell. That's what I mean. He may be able to surprise people by putting up a deal that nobody expected.
Lee,
Perhaps.
in
Yeah.
your estimation, Lee, are we more or less going off the rails into World War III now? Is there going to be is there going to be a cooling of tensions? Is there going to be a further fracturing as Trump comes into office? I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
expressing a desire to end the war in Ukraine. I feel like that's the right direction, but I have no idea. I mean, I have a single digit IQ. I don't know these things. That's why I bring you on.
You certainly don't. But
Yeah.
um, here's my problem with the World War III hypothesis, and that is we're not ready and we're not getting ready for one.
I didn't say it
Uh,
was good.
no, no, I mean if the however we want to describe the the power brokers here, the decision makers, the powers that be. If there really is a goal of going into World War III, we don't have sufficient or ready military formations, land, air, and sea. We don't have the defense industrial production for it. We face all kinds of other shortfalls. So who the hell is going to fight it on our behalf? So I'm really I don't think there is an intentional desire among Western leaders to push for a world war. I think it's more similar to that hypothesis I mentioned earlier, whereby it's the great game, and there's kind of the West on one side, and broadly speaking the East, but more, kind of this Russia, China, Iran axis on the other. And we can't go after the two most powerful ones, but there's a weaker one in the middle. And I think things are pushing more toward conflict there, um, versus a World War III scenario. Now, having said that, large wars generally happen when people don't think they're going to happen, and we're engaging in tremendously reckless behavior. There's enormous room for miscalculation, for accidents, but I think if that kind of global conflict sparks, it'll be because of that, and not because there's a specific plan by Western leaders to get into World War III. I think, like I said, if that's the case, what are we going to shoot with? We don't have, like the British Army could last maybe days or weeks with what it has. And they only have a few brigades that could deploy. Many European militaries are essentially glorified gendarmeries. Like who It doesn't make sense unless there is a entirely secret and quite literally underground armaments industry that we just don't know about. And it's stockpiled everywhere. The West is not preparing for a direct war, or um, or it's actually the case that we're going to try to push against our geopolitical competitors in the place in which we perceive them to be weak. And I think that's the case.
I think it's more like you have in a sense a world war, but it's not the military one. It's between two systems or two visions, and you will find it across the West. You have one that is a shrinking pie, and you want to get a bigger slice of a shrinking pie. That's European mindset. You see it in the current degrowth idea. And the other one is let's expand the pie and eat more of it. That's where you see the Elon Musks of the day. Nobody's talking about this, but it's now as expensive to go into space as it used to be to cross the Atlantic. And you have asteroids. The US now, they give this company, I forgot, maybe it's called Space Forge. They give them a license to exploit asteroids. So I would think it's more like two systems. One is planning on expand into resource, into space, into new technologies with AI, information technologies, maybe new, almost even in biology, like full expansion. And another vision, you will find it in the West, much more in Europe, where I'm happy with my share of the pie. I want it to grow, and you guys eat the bugs while I eat the steak.
Yeah.
And you find it across every country. In Russia, they were talking about how bugs are better than steak on TV 2 days ago. So you find it in every country, and on top of this, you have those world wars between the West and the East, and the bears and the dragons.
Um, Kind of a little more out of left field or different direction, but back to something like the just as an idea, like the Nord Stream pipeline. So like we look at something like most of Europe, and let's just say for example the F-35, like they buy that, and they don't really produce. I mean, sure they produce some armored vehicles, some weapons, some guns, but I mean it seems like the real expenditures come from it's more so they're just going to the like US DoD catalog and they choose what they want. And you could say, hey, look, they're paying us. Sure, but they don't do the R&D. That's what we do. And, what does it matter? We're all allies. Well, and in a power sense, it kind of does matter because they don't have to research and develop these like hyper complex new weapon systems. They just purchase them, which is all well and good. But it also means that it's kind of a walled garden that they can't leave. So even if they think the US did Nord Stream, you kind of got to shut up and just take it. And I wonder if that bleeds over into something like the Middle East. Like, man, America's tying us in there, and it's like, hey, man, they're our ticket. if they say you can't buy F-35s anymore, like we haven't designed a plane since the 50s. Like we're fucked. So there is kind of a they get the benefit of not having to spend all that money in R&D. That's why they can do these programs because the U.S. is essentially the dad that allows them to have a trust fund. But it also means that you can't really step a whole lot out of line. And I wonder how much that bleeds over into just something like the Middle East, where they might not like it, but they know where their bread is buttered, and they kind of just gotta shut up. And you saw it with Nord Stream, you kind of see it with everything. The U.S. says we're back in Israel, like, yeah, we're back in Israel. Like off the record, they might be like, this is bullshit, but hey man, where do you think we're getting all these JDAMs? Where do you think we're getting all these, missile systems? And I've thought about that, and then also the entire idea of like, there's back doors and F-35s and shit, and if they ever turned on us, we could just turn them off. But I think there's a lot to that as to,
Mhm.
you know, we'll let them, we almost don't want them to pay their fair share. Like it's a good thing to bitch about if you're running for office. Trump does it, but you kind of don't want them to. They pay enough. They pay for the plane, and we sell them the plane, and we get make a couple shekels. You don't want them with the capability to, if I wanted to control, like, let's just say you guys, I'd let you on the show, come on the show whenever you want. You have my number. I don't want you starting your own show because if any point I start, slowly getting crazy, which I imagine is an inevitability, I don't want you guys being like, yeah, I'm not associated with Tommy anymore. I want you in my walled garden, right? I'm like, you guys are like, yeah, Tommy's kind of crazy. I don't really, I don't condone him wearing that SS uniform, but like, I don't have a podcast. He does. You know what I mean? And so it may seem like that's kind of this entire rant is out of left field, but I don't think it is. I think that probably influences, like, where's the rest of the world on Syria? Where's the rest of the world on Assad? And it's like, the rest of the world is just kind of being like, yeah, I mean, I have nothing. I don't know. I buy my planes from them. Do you think
Yeah,
there's any, like, anywhere close to the truth with that?
I think that's pretty much it. The US wants Europe subordinated and has effectively done so for a long time and to an increasing extent over time.
Yeah.
They were all too happy to cash in that peace dividend at the end of the Cold War. And now, I mean, it's absurd. Like I said, I think the Brits could deploy two or three brigades, like not
Yeah.
division
We
brigades.
don't, we don't want them no more than that. No more than
How
that.
many of their Trident missile tests earlier this year flopped? Quite literally flopped. The missile came out of the sub and flopped into the ocean with the defense minister in the conning tower.
And then
Um,
don't worry about it. If that doesn't work, you just call America and we'll launch them.
yeah, so that's precisely it. And now we're on to the next piece on the board.
I I think
Yeah, if
that's
you
what
don't
it
build
is.
it, you don't own it.
Correct.
If you don't
Correct.
make it, you don't own it. And the US left them to deal with the Red Sea, and they're unable to do anything. Now they're paying additional fees to ship their goods around Africa. They're going to pay additional for the oil and gas that has to go all around Africa. And if it comes through here, it's going to be that either Lebanon or Israel or both will be, in a way, I wouldn't say under the thumb, but it would be in agreement with the US. It will be somehow a US company dealing with it.
It's it's kind of like the George Carlin bit. He's like, "When's the last time we bombed white people?" It's like Germany. Why? Because they said, "Hey, we're gonna take over the world," and we said, "Bullshit. That's our fucking job." It's kind of the same thing. It's like the Chinese are doing the Belt and Road Initiative. Well, what's that? Well, what they're doing is they're running around all these poor nations and they're offering to build modern infrastructure at exorbitant loans. And when they can't repay the loans, they just say, "Hey, just give us control of your resources and your warm water port." And it's like, "Hey, what do you fucking? That's what we do." Who the
That's
fuck
what
do
it
you
is. Yeah.
think you are?
Hence the competition I described earlier.
Yeah,
But we
it's
cannot go up against them directly. We cannot go up against Russia directly. But China gets much of its oil supply from Iran. I think that's the thing that people are trying to undo.
Yes, and I think now it's for gas, it's shifting more from Australia, and Australia is US
Mm.
ally. So in a way, China is hemmed in by resources. It's cheaper for it to take from Australia. Iran is losing market share. Qatar is losing market share. It's a bit, the game is changing already.
Mhm.
And this war here is part of this game changing. I will find out what the drones are in the US soon enough, but I got one outside the window here. I thought it was going to cut off the connection because every time they have those drones, something weird happens to the connections.
No.
I don't think we're gonna find out. I don't think we're gonna get any closure. I don't. I don't know where we get this idea of like, do you think it's aliens or like what? Why in God's name do you think we would ever be told? Like, at what point has there ever been closure on anything? Why would it apply to this? Are they aliens or government? You're not gonna know. It's yeah. So I don't know. I think
Lizard people.
yeah. No. I think the drones. I don't think we'll get any closure. I think it will just. I think in a couple months we'll say whatever happened with that. That just it seems to be not that again. Not that this really has anything to do with this show, but I think in 2020 they come out with that article, New York Times, America has, we have craft not of this world, and it was insane. It was any UFO head is like, oh my God, like hell's freezing over. And then it kind of went away. A couple years prior to that, you had General Fravor going on Fox News talking about the Tic Tac, crazy, and then it kind of went away. Last year we have but we have the Senate hearing where they're like, hey, we have extra solar biological samples, and then that kind of goes away. So it
Hmm.
seems like it's a slow walking of disclosure over at least a decade, if not more. And if which is the case, this one will kind of fade away, and sometime in 2026 we'll have another thing. Um, but not to end it abruptly, I have another show that I have to get to,
They have a
and
hard
I'm
Sure.
retarded, and
out.
I don't know how to schedule time, so I'll figure it out one day. But for everybody listening, please go in the description. You can follow George and Lee both on Twitter, and then all of the other links are in there as well. Um, Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Take care.
All right, guys, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, guys. Thank you for watching.